Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you on the Tier 9 French Premium Light Tank. It is the Projet Louis. This vehicle has a whopping rate of fire. It's able to deliver 8 rounds within 7 seconds with a 1-second intra-clip reload, meaning that if you want to just hold down the mouse button and feel like you're one of the most dangerous light tanks in the game, then this might be the vehicle for you. But be warned, it's rather large and has a few issues that I'm going to be highlighting today. But if you can get over them and get around them, yeah, this is probably one of the more fun light tanks you can play. So I'm going to compare the Projet Louis to the Char 75 and also the AMX 1390. And before you think that I've gone crazy, I've got the Char 75 in the non-travel mode, or the firepower mode on the left, and the Char 75 in the travel mode on the right, so that you can get a really good idea of how both of those versions of the tank perform. So immediately we notice that the Projet Louis has the weakest caliber gun in this comparison. It's a 75mm compared to the 100mm that you'll have on the Char 75. This means that you won't be overmatching very much at all, only 20mm plates, whereas the Char will be going through 30mm plates. So it's a definite advantage. But one of the main things this also gives you an advantage to is also the module damage that you deal. As we can see, the Projet Louis, even though it fires 8 rounds in that quick 7-second mag reload, or not mag reload, but mag unload, I should say, it has a module damage of 100. This is something that you won't see inside the game, but that's effectively how much damage you're going to be doing to the enemy's modules, which helps you either take things like tracks off, or alternatively helps you get those juicy fires or those ammo racks. The Char 75 has 135 module damage, meaning that you're doing about 35% extra with every single penetration. And considering that the mag on the Char 75 is 6, and also you're firing 3 rounds within 1 second with half a second burst, then of course you have a 3.5 second intra-clip reload before you can deliver another 3-round burst within a second. What this really means is the Projet Louis is definitely a notch down on the crazy module damage that you can do in the Char 75. And that's definitely one of the most exciting things about the tank, is really getting in that assassination mission, finding the broadside of an enemy, and every time you click that mouse, you're kind of hoping for a fire, or you're hoping for an ammo rack, and you often quite get them. Outside of this module damage disadvantage, you know what? Projet Louis can do 1,000 damage in 7 seconds. It's good, but it's not that great when you think that a lot of the Czech light tanks are now managing to get that out a lot quicker. The issue with the Czech light tanks is you can't really do that as effectively as the Projet Louis can do at long range, because the reticle really blooms out when you hold down the mouse button. Whereas with the Projet Louis, with its really good aim time, as we're going to see later on, it actually does manage to keep that reticle fairly under control. In addition to this, Projet Louis has a fantastic reload considering it has such a big mag, giving it a base damage per minute of 2,400, which puts the Char 75 to shame. In fact, the Projet Louis can almost reload, unload, and reload again before the Char 75 will have reloaded once. So that's a massive advantage for the Projet Louis in this regard. But do remember that the Char 75 is able to do 1,200 damage in 5.5 seconds, which is way better than the Projet Louis and its 1,000 in 7 seconds. One of the nice things about the Projet Louis, however, is that it does have an edge on penetration, both on its standard rounds and also on its premium rounds, over the other two vehicles in this comparison. It also carries way more ammunition, which does give it a higher potential damage, and all Char 75 owners will know out there how frustrating it is to have to fire rounds of 3 and then maybe have to reload an entire magazine, because the ammunition is precious and you really don't want to waste it. So now onto the gun handling. 1.6 seconds aim time is amazing on the Projet Louis, and its accuracy is the same as the other two French vehicles in this comparison at 0.38. Its gun handling is also really good when you're moving, but not so good when you're turning the turret. The Char 75 has kind of like 70% worse dispersion when moving outside of the travel mode, and also inside the travel mode, but its turret traverse dispersion is 0.04, which is practically negligible when you're in that firepower mode. Luckily, the Project Louis actually has a really good amount of gun depression at 9 degrees, allowing you to work ridge lines 1 degree better than the Char and 3 degrees better than the AMX 1390, which does mean this thing is very flexible. One passing mention should be made to the bloom after firing as well. This is a hidden statistic that you don't see in the garage, but it's basically how much your reticle blooms out after firing. A value of 2.5 is not as good as the Char 75, which again really sucks considering the Char 75 has that higher alpha damage. And it also has that faster mag unload. But it's still not bad, especially compared to a 1390. However, I'd rather probably be doing double the alpha damage and only having to fire once every kind of like 2.5 seconds compared to doing 125 damage every second on the Project Louis when you consider this kind of like bloom out. So mobility-wise, the Project Louis, it's neither good news nor bad news. 65 forwards makes it the slowest in this comparison when the Char 75 is in the travel mode, and its reverse speed of 20, again, the slowest in this comparison, with the Char 75 going 30 backwards in the travel mode and the 1390 going 23. Its power to weight ratio is not bad. 30 means that, again, it's just a little bit worse than the 1390, but look at the ground resistances. It's got about 20% worse ground resistances than the 1390, which means that this thing is really slow compared to a 1390. And considering it has worse ground resistances on medium, and it will have the soft ground resistances are irrelevant once you get off-road driving on the Char 75, that thing literally has like 50% extra power to weight ratio. And while we can see the Project Louis struggles to be able to get up to beyond 55 on soft, the Char 75 is bombing it along at like near its max speed limit. So they really do feel like they're completely different classes of tanks within that regard. So armor-wise, the Project Louis has 50 at the front and 25 at the side. Not pretty much the same as the 1390, but it is a bit worse than the Char, which seems to be able to get quite a few more ricochets. By far, the biggest annoying thing about the Project Louis is how far the front of the tank sticks out, and the fact that it's actually a really large target, which goes quite low to the ground. This means that you do get caught on rocks, you do get caught when you're trying to traverse tricky terrain through small opportunities to be able to squeeze through gaps, and also it means that if you're driving a little bit rough and you're kind of like launching yourself off cliffs, that you do take a lot of falling damage, unlike the other two French tanks in this comparison. Armor-wise, however, it does have this really nice auto-ricochet plate, but then again, it only works against 75mm guns. Sorry, 75mm and below guns. The lower plate is 50, which you can actually use to bait, but apart from that, guys, this thing is getting overmatched pretty much in all directions, and the armor is just not going to work. Outside of taking HE shells, it can actually defend itself against HE shells quite well, so that is an advantage of this vehicle. So don't fire too many HE rounds at the Project Louis unless you know what you're doing. You've got quite a big caliber gun. One thing that's really cool about this vehicle, however, is it does have 1,400 hit points like the AMX 1390, and that is something that has not been buffed on the Char 75, and so that has like old school light tank hit points, but it might be adjusted in the future. But until that happens, the Project Louis has a definitive advantage over the Char 75 in that area. The camera rating on this vehicle is the worst in this comparison outside of when the Char is in the travel mode, and the view range at 380 gives it a slight edge on the Char outside of the travel mode and comparable to the AMX 1390. Crew skills wise on this vehicle, it will work perfectly with your AMX 13105 crew. If you do have an EBR, you'll have to just miss one of the crew members on that tank as this vehicle doesn't have a dedicated loader. For your commander skills, I'd recommend Brothers, Concealment, then I'd probably take Recon, then I'd take Repairs, Emergency and Coordination will do you well on this tank. For your gunner, Brothers, Concealment, personally for me then Designated Target, then I'd take Repairs. Definitely Deadeye. This thing is designed to be able to get crits. So make sure you take Deadeye on a vehicle like this, and then take Armor as well. This vehicle, its dispersion when turning the turret is not particularly wonderful, but I still feel like you can get away without Snapshot if you use the gun handling build, which I'm going to highlight in a second. And for your driver, I would recommend Brothers, Concealment, then I'd take Repairs, off-road driving, smooth ride, and engineer on this vehicle. You could take controlled impact if you really want to try and make sure that you don't get out-rammed by light tanks, but considering this thing only weighs 18 tons, then you are going to still lose the majority of rams that you try to engage. For my equipment on this tank, I'm going to be using Vision System, an exhaust, and then you should probably be using coated optics. However, if you choose to set your field mods up in my way, then you can still use vents on this tank and still get yourself 452 meters view range. You're going to suffer a little bit with regards to your camera rating compared to if you go the other way with the field mod, but the advantage of this is that when you use the second build and you don't take coated optics and you go for a full firepower build, you still have a healthy 452 meters view range. And really, this is the build that I want to use on the Projet Louis. This is a really fun build, as you're going to be seeing in the gameplay, where you can rip and tear until the job is done. And that is vents, the best vert stabs that you can get on the tank, and then hopefully the best level experimental turbo you can have on the vehicle. And if you can even have a few spare stabilizer greasings, don't pay bonds for them, but if you've got 500 of them in stock like me, you can have a lot of fun with this build. This gives you amazing bloom reduction after firing. That's what not a lot of people realize, is that that hidden statistic, that bloom after firing, does get reduced by vert stabs. It does get reduced by rotation device. It does get reduced by the experimental mobility or experimental turbo, and also by the stabilizer greasing, meaning that this build is going to be packing me kind of like close to 40 reduction in the bloom after firing, which means that you can, again, just keep holding down that mouse button, having a lot of fun. For the field mods on this tank, what I would recommend doing is starting off with the top speed on this vehicle. Then I would personally improve the accuracy on this tank. I feel like its reload is good enough, and I think one of the biggest things about if you were to take the reload improvement is that you can't reduce the you can't reduce the intraclip reload, and still you still have to spend 7 seconds if you want to dump out that mag. But if you find yourself wanting to fire like 2 or 3 shots and then reloading quickly, you might want to go the other way, but you'll be significantly reducing your accuracy. I would take the firepower slot so you can be able to slap your vert stabs in there. And also, it's one of the advantages that you can use standard vents if you go for the build that I'm showing, and still be able to have good view range. And then for the final field mod, I'm taking view range. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to use vents. The vents will give me a really nice upgrade to the vehicle, even when I'm doing the full spotting build on this tank. And while I will effectively be losing about 1% concealment compared to if I hadn't taken the field mod, and I'll be losing about 3% concealment if I had taken the field mod, because the vents, when they actually boost your camo by 1%, so you're only losing 1 or 3%. But if you were to go the other way, like I'd have 434 meters view range for that bit of an extra camo upgrade. And remember, I'd have to drop the vents, so actually my camo would go down to about 35.5 there. And for that amount of view range that you'd have to sacrifice for when you want to be in the firepower mode, personally, I'm going to go this way. I can still manage to get myself nearly 40% camo when I'm... Well, actually, I can get myself 40% camo when I'm wanting to use the camo build on this. As you can see, I can get 41.58% camo. And while, you know, it would be nice to have it a little bit higher, I feel like this is the sweet spot for me. As this thing, it's not a pure scout. It's a bit of a damage dealer, and that's why I want to improve my firepower with the vents while maybe sacrificing a little bit of the camo rating that I might have. But again, it works out perfectly for that damage build. No need for coated optics. All firepower, all fun. Anyway, let's go get stuck in on the battlefield with this little French terror. So firstly, I'm going to be rolling out on Muravanka, and you are seeing this vehicle before I managed to get the final field mod, hence why I'm using a vision system, coated optics, and an exhaust. But as I just explained, if you didn't skip over that part of the video, eventually, once I get access to that final field mod, I'm going to decide to lower my camo by 2%, which when I use the vents is only 1%. But I managed to actually get myself about 450 meters view range. Now, I will lose a little bit of the coated optics view range there, but the benefit to the firepower, the bloom, the accuracy, the reload, the intuition switch, everything I feel like is what I want to. And like, look at this. This is just Projet Louis right now, not wanting to sit still, not wanting to make myself an easy target, and trying to get as many shots as I can on the bat chat there. Sometimes this vehicle just needs to kind of like whiff at its opponents, even just to like fend them off. And then look how quickly we're reloaded again. It's actually really crazy how quickly you can reload in this tank. It's definitely one of the advantages, and it allows you to be quite aggressive with how you want to take your chances at your opponents. If you're in a Char 75, you really need to kind of like fully commit to those bursts, because if you whiff them, you're then having to reload for like 40 seconds. With the Projet Louis, it's definitely better for somebody who wants to just roll the dice a little bit and not worry so much about making that kind of like perfect assassination. The Char 75 will be way better for somebody who, I guess, is clean with their engagements and kind of puts all of their eggs in one basket in a way. So you should be very careful with auto-aiming at Projet Louis, and that is because it's because of the really low caliber gun that this vehicle has. Even the negligible armor that the Projet Louis has is actually quite proficient at bouncing its own shells. So not the best marksmanship there. Again, take a look at the disparity between a build like this, where we're using the coated optics and the exhaust and the vision system, and with the follow-up game, which is going to be on mines, where I show you really what this tank is capable of when you go for like that full firepower build. So unfortunately my team is losing the woods. Nobody's really sniped for me. I'm not sure if that gorilla is AFK or just sitting in a very bizarre position. And even though I dominated the center of the map, stopped the bat chat from taking it, and tried to get some vision, it hasn't really mattered. So I feel like I'm behind enough trees here. I'm wrong. The Projet Louis on the enemy team has come forwards, and they're able to see me, and I get absolutely slammed. But luckily, the sheer amount of hit points that this vehicle has keeps me in it. A little bit of a greedy play to go after that E50M. Maybe I was feeling a little bit of frustration that nobody was actually doing anything on my team, and we were down by a couple of tanks. But yeah, that was far too aggressive. I should have been more intelligent. I should have just waited, even if my team weren't managing to get damage. So let's be a little bit sneaky instead. Let's knock down this tree and get in a bush. So now we're in both a tree and a bush, which means that pretty much I'm not going to get spotted. I'm just checking my rear angles there, and this is quite a hard thing to hide in small bushes. It ain't an ELC even 90, that's for sure, boys and girls. But considering that we're in a tree and a bush right now, it is a little bit sus, right? That we are sitting in this position. A little bit suspect, a little bit obvious as to where we are. But they're pretty much going to have to come within about 50 meters to spot me in this scenario. And then sometimes the Projet Louis just has to have those moments where it's the damage dealer, and then have the moments where it's actually a scout, and it can be a proficient scout. As I mentioned, with a build like this, you can get like 42% camo. Maybe even a little bit more if you decide that you don't want the firepower from the vents. You could probably get yourself up to about 44% camo rating, while also still having a very decent view range. Of course, if you decide to go that way, it's going to mean that you have to sacrifice one of the pieces of equipment if you still want to have good view range for the firepower build. But then again, you know, if you are taking a firepower build, it's probably quite likely that you're on a map like Mines or Tundra, where the view range doesn't really matter so much. But I'd say it still does. You still sometimes need view range on maps like Mines and Tundra. Or if you're playing on Pearl River, for example. I'll take the firepower build on a map like Pearl River, Runeberg, not Ensk region anymore, but on Runeberg, sometimes it's still quite nice to have view range towards the latter part of the game. Alright, so we're just getting vision in here. The Koldav, the Udez, we're just spotting them all. I'm thinking about having a go at this bat chat, and just look how bad like auto aim is. Look how far it is behind the target. It's really wild how poor auto aim would be on this tank unless something was literally sitting still for you. I'm trying to feather and I realize I can just shoot through the pillar, and oh man, that's satisfying. We held that mag for a long time. I probably should have reloaded, but honestly, in this kind of a situation, I thought that I was only going to get about like 5 off anyway, and I thought that maybe I'd get spotted and I'd need them if one of the Projet Louis decided to rush me. Also, by the way, I'd like to highlight, it's not very PG, the can opener in chat. I'm not going to read out what I say, but yeah, at least a little bit of humor. That I got a giga lol back from the can opener there. Sometimes I like to throw things back on players where they're being a little bit weird by being even weirder. But yeah, offers open if I can manage to get in contact with that man's father, for sure. Yes, 100%. Okay, Cool. With that said and done, and a little bit of trolling, I think we need a little bit of trolling in the holiday ops with the kinds of teams that we're having. And I think people need to realize that they are speaking to some humans out there, even if they aren't very human themselves. I tell you what feels very good though is managing to absolutely rip apart that GW Tiger. Even with the non-firepower build, even though that like reticle's blooming out, the gun is still pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. But yeah, it still feels just a touch messy, especially at like those mid to long ranges. It also means that when you're driving around, that you will have a lot more bloom for if you want to do manual aim or even auto aim in this scenario. But just a great game so far for the Projet Louis. We contested the early position, we used our firepower, and then we had to back down a little bit to be able to get going with the vision. And yeah, this is just fun, right? Look at this gun. Yeah, boy, yeah. And then I'm hoping that one fire on the griller, we got him, right? Who uses a fire extinguisher on a griller? Goodness gracious. Anyway, we slam it down, 6k combo, 5 kills, sweet ace tanker for the Projet Louis. So this was, as I said, like the spotting build. You're going to want to use this on maybe about like 70 or 80% maps. Let's see what we can do with the firepower build instead. So here we go. We're loading into mines, and so we're going to lock our firepower build in here. And as you can see, the eagle-eyed view on the mini-map, this is before I got the final field mod, and so I haven't been able to take that extra view range, and so I'm not even reaching, with a premium consumable, a perfect crew, and bounty vents, I'm not even reaching 445 meters spotting. But that will change if you decide to take that little bit of extra view range. Now let me clarify, if you're not using a premium consumable, you should absolutely, utterly not take vents for your spotting build, and instead you should probably lower the camo. Sorry, you should improve the camo for the final field mod if you aren't using a premium consumable, and make sure you're using vision system coated optics and exhaust on the vehicle. But this is just how I'm going to be setting up the vehicle, and I think most people are probably going to end up using a premium consumable on this vehicle. It does just give you such a tremendous advantage, and I don't think I got set on fire once in kind of like the 40 or so games that I've played in this tank so far. But like, look at that reticle now. With that, the vert stabs, with the experimental turbo, with that stabilizer greasing, we can, the reticle just barely blooms. And take a look at what it's going to be like as well when we are fully unloading this magazine later on. And yeah, you're going to be a happy camper. Look at this. Boom, boom. We are fully aimed pretty much while we're holding down the mouse button. Absolutely disgusting. What was that? That was 6 shots in quick succession. I can tell you, if we were not using the vert stabs, if we were not using the experimental turbo there, we would not be unloading as accurately. It's absolutely wonderful what you can do with this gun like this. Look at this. Here we go. Just putting them in against different targets. Unfortunately, the 53 TP gets his armor towards me, and I decide to not be greasy or greedy even. I'm definitely greasy after all of the YouTube videos and streams that I've been putting out this week, and just hide between those 2 shots. If I have any word of advice to you, it's to realize that even though it might feel like you are kind of Rambo right now and really going for it with your rate of fire, my firm recommendation to you is to realize you aren't doing that much damage. So be patient. If somebody's aiming a big 122mm at you, just fall back. It's not worth it for the extra 200 damage. There'll be more opportunities later. And because of the fast reload that this vehicle has, you have more than enough opportunity to be able to reload and shoot them again. Of course, if you feel like this is like a game-winning opportunity to get a frag on an opponent, go for it. Look at this gun, though. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Guys, seriously, you have to try this build. And can I just say, this is possibly the most annoying thing about holiday ops right now, is people who become entitled to positions. I mean, look what was I achieving here. 2,700 damage. I was having a great old time. And then this bozo comes, he says, fall back on me, and now he's basically like pushing me out of this position, and I can't really be able to use it anymore. Oh, man. And I have to admit, at the time, I was getting a little bit frustrated. If there's one thing I hate more than anything, it's entitled players coming and spamming full back on you and then trying to push you off the edge. What an absolute weasel. And so I think to myself, shall I push him off the edge? And then I think, like, maybe not. Let's just try and find a position alongside him and realize it ain't going to happen. And if I've got any recommendation to all of you, it's physics abuse. Wargaming support will probably ban both of you, so just don't do it, kids. Especially with me, that if I was to get my account banned at Holiday Ops, I wouldn't be able to play it for 3 days, which would suck. So I'm going to try and be the bigger man in this situation and just leave it. But I also understand that, like, giving in to bullies in that scenario is not cool at all. But whatever. Like, I can go away and hopefully try and be useful later on. At the end of the day, if I just kind of... If I do like an eye for an eye instead of turn the other cheek in that scenario, I just don't think it's going to be very beneficial for me at all. And even though that guy is clearly a bit of a weasel, luckily he's actually left the position now, so I can go back and use it. Let me tell you, there are a lot of weasels playing right now. There are a lot of people with new accounts where they've gone and unlocked themselves a load of tech trees for free. And they don't care if they get those accounts banned, guys. So if you're like a legitimate player, just be a little bit careful with a lot of trolls about right now. Trying to shove you around or this or that or mess with you. Because they're probably on burner accounts and they just don't care, guys. Be warned, though, if you think like you're going to register a new account and then go and troll people, Wargaming can see your IP addresses, and they will probably ban your main account as well if they see you doing that. Alrighty then. So with that word of advice, I'm having a quick look at the Type 71 to see, is he going to shove me off the edge here? I guess I'm getting a little bit paranoid. He's come back into this position, but it's a little bit too late. So we're going to pick up the kill on the studded sixer, and then we're going to come down the slope and hopefully get the 252U as well. And look at that gun handling. Oh man, it just feels great, guys. And then hopefully we're going to come around this corner and go after the M454. And yeah, this magazine, really, this firepower build, it makes it such a pleasure to play this tank when you can get some good maps. Look at this. Look at this. Yes, 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 yes. Another fire as well. And that's why you definitely have to take Deadeye on this tank as a priority. If you don't take Deadeye on this tank, you are not playing this tank correctly. Take Deadeye, you'll get those extra crits, you'll get those extra fires, you'll get those extra ammo racks. And while it won't feel the same as... I'm going HE here, by the way. This tank has so much ammo that you can go for an HE mag. But funnily enough, I'm actually doing way less damage than I would do if I was just firing the AP in this scenario. And it means that I actually miss out on getting the top gun there. I think if I was firing the regular rounds, I probably could have been able to get them. It's a tricky one, though, right? I did 171 and 178, which is 50 extra. But then it looks like I lost about 80 and 80. So yeah, I'd say I was down on damage. But if the Borsig had just sat there and took it, I could have probably get them in a full mag. I'm driving like an absolute goof right now. And a lot of that is also because of this very long front. It really does catch things. It's got all of the speed of a light tank, but it's humongous, and it manages to actually get fairly awkward. We come around the corner because we've got a good intra-clip reload. We get the shots in. And wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. That was a really cool 5,000 combined game in not the best possible matchup, and a top gun to boot. I have to admit, guys, this tank, it's lots of fun in a situation like that, and especially when you get yourself the firepower build on this tank. And if any of you, for some reason, still don't think in 2025, nearly 2026, that you need 2 sets of equipment on a tank, I challenge you to diversify your equipment builds and to choose them for depending on what map you manage to get on. It can really revolutionize not only how a tank feels, how much fun you can have, but also your results. And you're really just putting a massive handicap on yourself for absolutely no reason if you don't try to diversify your equipment builds. So to conclude, the Projet Louis is a fun, voracious light tank that is not as dangerous as, you know, your pure scouts, you know, your G-saws, when you fully set it up in such a way. It doesn't have the best of view ranges, doesn't have the best of camo ratings, but what it really, really excels at is this kind of transition between doing a lot of damage and also getting enough spotting. It is probably one of the more dangerous tier 9 damage dealers. with regards to light tanks. That great reload, the burst potential, the fires, the ammo racks. It feels like a very comfortable light tank to play within that role. However, what I will say is that I think the Char 75 is better for exceptional players. I think just the burst potential that you can get with the Char 75 is just like another notch up on this tank. I would rather be able to do 1,250 damage in like 5 seconds rather than have to do 1,000 damage in 7 seconds. Also, with the Char 75, that initial burst of doing 600 in 1 second can really surprise your opponents and put them in a more vulnerable state. And also, it allows you to be able to then reposition yourself for the next clean magazine as well. Whereas with the Projet Louis, the vehicle is just so much more... Oh, God, what was that even? Even with the gun handling build, I was very angry about that. How did I even miss all of those shells? Was I just aiming really badly? I think against the Borask, I wasn't giving enough lead. This thing doesn't have the best of shell velocities at 1,000 meters a second. But for those rounds on the T69, that was just absolute frustration. So back to it as to what I was saying with the... And even look at this. Even with this is like the best build that you could have outside of dropping vents and taking a rotation device with regards to bloom after firing, and it's still not enough at this distance. So, this vehicle, I think it will be better for the vast majority of players than the Char 75, but I do think it will be less fun. Oh my lord! Oh, eventually I'm going to hit one of them, right? So you can see at like decent distances, this tank actually starts to be a little bit frustrating. And honestly, I would rather be playing a 1390 and have 240 alpha in a 2.5 second intro clip. Would I rather have the Char 75 at long distances? No, I wouldn't. And look at this, because I'm not using, I guess it's because I also don't have the final field mod, which increases my view range. I couldn't see the IS-3 at a decent distance, which forces me to come forwards and making myself vulnerable. Making me get caught by that IS-3 there. So, this vehicle, I think it's going to be better for the vast majority of players, but if you're an exceptional player, you will have more fun in a Char 75. Sure, it's got a long reload, but you really feel like you're more of an assassin of the battlefield. You're faster to get around, and then as long as you like set up and leave that travel mode to be able to go into the firepower mode, you can deliver that double mag. Get more fires, get more ammo racks, dare I say it, have more fun, more risk, more opportunity. And then afterwards, you can just get inside the speed mode and then get away afterwards. But yeah, the Projet Louis for this, I mean, apart from that one shell, I'm pretty happy with my marksmanship there. And the EBR actually manages to extinguish the fire. Looks like a manual fire extinguisher there. So good reactions for that EBR 90 if he was able to do that. For me personally, however, I can't really see myself wanting to play the Projet Louis that much because I have a Char 75. But I think, as I said, for the majority of players, I think the Projet Louis will be the easier tank to play. Until, like, some proper frustration happens. We're trying to get these rounds at the IS-3. I lose my gunner. I repair my crew. I lose my gunner again. And then I get killed by the IS-3 afterwards. So good job by the Projet Louis on the enemy team. I did not expect to lose my gunner literally within a second. Well, I guess he lasted for about half a second for my delayed response on healing him before the very next shell also took him out. And so I think it's really important that I show this game as well. This game, sure, I didn't probably have perfect marksmanship. I wasn't locked in with my Projet Louis like I was. This was early on in my Projet Louis gameplay and not the same as it was later on. But I will say that I had probably more frustration in this tank than I had fun. And it did take me about 30 games before I started to feel a little bit comfortable in this vehicle. But even after I started to feel comfortable, really, I didn't have those, oh, wow, this feels amazing moments like in the Char 75. This vehicle, it's not the roller coaster ride. In the Char 75, you have these exhilarating, super fast drive around moments, super highs, and then you have like the super lows of you missed the mag and now you got to reload for 40 seconds, and then the super highs of like, I get to do 1,200 damage in like 5 seconds, and wow, I got a fire, I got an ammo rack. It's a way more exciting vehicle. But just because there's a more exciting vehicle doesn't mean that the Projet Louis is not a good tank. I think it is. I think it's on par with the Char 75. I personally think it's a little less fun, and I think that exceptional players will not only have more fun but do better in the Char 75. But just because there's another premium French light tank out there that might fulfill both of those roles doesn't mean that the Projet Louis is not a half-decent tank. This vehicle, Wargaming are clearly trying to make a 1357 at a higher tier. Have they succeeded? In a way they have. But I think, personally, I'd rather play a 1357 at tier 7 than playing the Projet Louis at tier 9. And I'd rather play a Char 75. That's just how I feel about this tank. But again, just because I have my personal preferences doesn't mean that you might not really enjoy this vehicle. And if you've never played a Char 75, this one is way easier to play. And so there'll be a huge amount of the player base, the average, the below average, and the slightly above average players who will probably end up doing better with the consistency that they have on the Projet Louis than they would do in the Char 75. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for me today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the Projet Louis in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.